Okay. We have a great break today. One of our longtime friends of the program, someone who you know as one of the longest-running radio hosts here in the state of Florida, Joe Pippen. He's an attorney here in the Tampa Bay area. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show again.
I love having you on, Joe. I don't know much about this area, and unfortunately, it seems like most folks are a little undereducated in this particular area, your area of expertise. Before we jump into really what estate planning is all about and what folks need to know, I want to hear about the radio show. When did you start the radio show, Joe?
No, 1984. So the Tampa Bay Magazine wrote an article about the longest-running continual show in Florida, which is so 37 years now.
Wow.
I go in every week, usually to multiple stations. I was nationally syndicated for a while, and just want to do a public service of answering legal questions.
Right. So they line up on the phones and start throwing questions at you.
Right. I never have to prepare because I never know what I'm going to be asked. So, but I just I know most of the answers because I've been asked a lot of the things multiple times. Once in a while, I get a question I don't know, and of course I say I don't know, but I can get them help.
Right.
So.
It just shows you how starved people are for this information. It's something that weighs on people's mind a lot. They want to make sure they have their ducks in a row.
Right. And one of my favorite, so there's I call it 80% educational and about 20% entertaining.
Right.
Because I do get a few entertaining calls once in a while. One man called recently and wanted to know, he says, tell me about citizens' arrest. He says, I want to go down and arrest the mayor of St. Petersburg for running a sanctuary city. And he's violating this unconstitutional what he's doing. I want to go arrest him and take him to prison. What's going to happen? I said, well, the only thing that's going to happen is when you get to the prison, they're going to arrest you for kidnapping or something. They'll
Right.
probably think of a few more charges, too. So don't do that.
What about folks like me who see a lot of Law and Order on TV and think they understand everything and come at you, oh, no, sir. I know this because I've seen it on television.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. No. They're not going to solve the case that quick.
Yeah.
But
So when you get involved with somebody in terms of the estate planning side, you've got to ask them a bunch of questions to find out what they have or what they don't have, right? Because they'd have no idea what it's supposed to look like.
yeah, I usually start our meetings with a series of questions.
Now,
Would you like for me to put you through
please,
that?
Please, I know I'm uneducated in this area.
Well, are you married?
I am not.
All right. Do you have children?
I do not.
All right. Then I would ask the size of your estate. I'm not going to ask you that on air.
Okay.
So that's an important question, though, because, if you won a lotto and you had millions and millions of dollars, the plan would be different than if you have $300,000 to $500,000 or even $1 million. It'd be different. It could be a different answer.
Sure.
Well, then I ask you, and you're probably one of the more difficult type to deal with because you don't have children to leave money to.
Right.
So the question becomes, who do you want to leave your estate to? And a lot of people just don't know. If they don't have a spouse or children, you might tell me brothers or sisters
Right.
or nieces or nephews or something like that. But usually, and the most difficult question for if you did have a minor child is who the guardian would be. Because that's one of the questions. Who do you want to raise your
Right.
child if something happens to you?
You know,
Who you want to manage money for the benefit of your child, and who you want to raise the child?
Just before we get too far down that road, when you talk about using a family member, in my situation, that makes perfect sense to me. I have sisters with kids and all that kind of thing. How often do I have to alert that family member that they are the selection to avoid some conflict amongst other family members?
Well, I would generally tell the family members that you've appointed to be in charge, where your documents are, because they got to find your documents, number one. And number two, do they really want the job? But your documents always name a backup.
Okay.
Or two, sometimes two backups, a primary and a secondary backup. So you have a plan in place in case they can't do it. They're ill or they moved or they're going through a divorce themselves or somebody, there's some reason they don't want to do it or can't do it. There's a backup plan.
Joe, just before we get too far, how much work is required on their part? Say they are named as my benefactor.
Well, their job basically is when you die to take a death certificate, collect assets, figure out what your assets are, how they're titled, follow the instructions in the will or trust that you have, and pay your bills and do your taxes and put a notice in the paper about
Okay, so it's quite a bit more than I realized it was.
creditors.
Okay.
So if your sister was going to be your primary beneficiary, she's going to get a big pop. So it should be worthwhile.
Right,
But she would
right.
hire an attorney, though, to do most of the, the court work and so forth.
Now, do folks ever ask you, hey, is my estate big enough to warrant all these expenses, potential expenses, as far as settling, dividing it up? What if your estate doesn't quite reach a level where you feel like it has value to put these people through that kind of work?
Well, just a minimal estate, the probate fee could be $2,500, $3,500 with $500 or $600 in court costs.
Okay.
So if you did a trust, even if you had a smaller estate, you would avoid that.
Well, and the trust does that in what way?
Well, a trust avoids probate. That's the primary reason people do trust.
Okay, now, obviously, I don't know what you're talking about, so tell me about probate, Joe.
Well, probate is the proving process of getting assets out of a deceased person's name.
I see.
So if you died with a home in your name, or if you died with a brokerage account just in your name, well, now you died, so it's in the name of a deceased person. So the only one that has the power to deal with it is who you've named as the personal representative in your will. So the person you named, your sister, let's say, is named the personal representative. So she would bring me, if she was going to use me, she would bring your will, the original will, and a death certificate. Mm-hmm. I would file that with the court and petition for her to be appointed the personal representative. Well, that whole process is probate. Now, if you had a living trust, the asset is not in the name of a deceased person. It's in your name in a living trust. The trust is still living. Mm-hmm. Your sister would be the backup trustee. So your sister could take the death certificate to a bank and become the trustee of your accounts to pay your bills and make the distribution. If you had a quitclaim deed of your property into the trust, now she can sell that very easily. She can list it with Brandon very quickly.
Yeah.
And then your sister would have the power without probate to sell the property. It makes it quick and easy.
What I'd really like to avoid is putting a burden of settling my outstanding accounts or having collectors come at them for something that I didn't take care of. So, I think of it as a burden already. I certainly don't want to make it worse than it has to be. What mitigating steps can I take to make the? I mean, that's where you come in, right, Joe?
Yeah. Well, the easiest thing to do to make the steps easier and no probate and quick and easy is to have a trust, really.
Okay.
Because that takes the court out of the system. That takes the court fees. It's a $400 or $500 filing fee. You have to put an ad in the paper. You have to be bonded. Probate lasts 6 months to a year. With the trust, it all can be very, very quick. We've had states be settled within a month, very quickly.
And outside of being contested by the siblings or the spouse, people involved in the account, that's really the only thing that's going to extend the problems in that situation you just explained, right?
Yeah. Well, there's not many people that contest as you would think, though.
Okay.
And the only really valid reasons to contest a will or a trust are undue influence or incompetence. Incompetence you prove with 2 doctor's letters. The person, was out of it and didn't know what they couldn't sign a legal document when during the time frame the document was signed. Now, undue influence would work this way. Suppose you brought your sister. So let's say you have 5 siblings.
Correct.
And you brought your sister with you to the meeting. And you wound up leaving her everything. Mm-hmm. Well, that would be a good allegation of undue influence because she was with you, and she was present.
Another sibling would say that influence resulted in her getting a larger percentage.
Yeah, and they could very well win. So it's always better not to bring an interested party with you when you're doing your estate documents if they're going to be favored.
Boy, as you can see, there's quite a few details that I didn't think through and that perhaps you have not thought through. That's why we bring Joe Pippen on the show here. When we come back, we're going to talk to more through these scenarios. There's so many scenarios out there that you have to consider because anything could arise, and if you're not prepared for it, that's when the misallocation of your funds is going to happen. You certainly don't want that to happen. You've got a lot of folks that you're looking to take care of. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back with Joe Pippen. And, of course, we have our feel-good story of the day, just like Brandon does every day. This one's a great one about Steve and Aisha Curry feeding millions of people during the pandemic. Don't go anywhere. This is the Consumer Quarterback Show.
This is Warwick Dunn, and you're listening to the Real Estate Quarterback Show hosted by my man, Brandon Rhymes.
To get in touch with Brandon, call 813-670-7372. Online at consumerqb.com.